Hey, pool chasers. I remember the first time that a customer told me that their pool light wasn't working and asked me to check it out. Do you remember when that happened to you? Well, for me, it was a mixture of emotions. On one hand, I was very excited for the opportunity to learn a new skill and make some money. And on the other hand, I was terrified because I did not know how to go about doing that. Thankfully, our buddy Mark helped us learn, but it sure would have been nice to have an episode like this one to help me understand the terminology and how to go about accomplishing that repair. Pool lighting can be one of the most intimidating subjects in our industry. We think that our guest today did a fantastic job of explaining how lights operate and the different options there are when repairing a light. He even gave us an awesome history lesson on the origin of lights and how they evolved over the years. We know you're going to enjoy it. So, let's get into episode 108 with Zack Pickard of Pentair.
Welcome to your go-to podcast for the pool and spa industry. My name is Tyler Rasmussen.
And my name is Greg Villafania. And this is the Pool Chasers Podcast. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Can you please introduce yourself and what your role is with Pentair?
My name is Zack Pickard. I've been with Pentair for just over 12 years. I'm the group product manager for lights, heaters, and heat pumps. So as a product manager, have responsibility for those product lines, introducing new products, making the business case to support those new opportunities, but then also looking after the overall health of the product portfolio, which includes, kind of maintaining products that are in the middle of their product life cycle, as well as eventually obsoleting older products. My career with Pentair so far has been really exciting and interesting. Had the opportunity to travel and meet customers and people and collaborate on many different types of projects and products. Really great fit for me and really excited to be a product manager at Pentair.
Right. We appreciate it. And for those of you that don't know, we had Zack on episode 68 where we talked about heaters, and we thought it was a really good episode. So if you haven't heard it, check it out. So we want to talk about lighting with you today. Can you tell us some of the history of the pool lights and how they've transitioned through the years?
Yeah, sure. Before I jump into that, I wanted to just say that, I'm personally fascinated by lighting, and I have been since I was a kid. When I got some birthday money as a little kid, I would try to buy a cool flashlight, or, around holiday season after the Christmas lights came down, I was like, taking them apart to try to figure out what worked. I worked at Pentair for over 10 years before I got involved in the lighting product line. But when I had the opportunity, for me, it's been really cool to see the technology that we use in pool lights and understand it kind of at a deeper level, because it's just something lighting in general is something I'm personally interested in.
That's really cool. Were you really into Christmas lights? Go down the different neighborhoods looking at Christmas lights as a kid?
Yeah. And when I was really little, it was just like maybe they had the twinkly ones, but then it started to get into flashing ones and all that. Kind of in the 80s, that technology kind of took off, and then I got the clapper. I don't know if you guys remember the clapper, clap
Yeah.
on, clap off. And
Yeah.
I had that in my bedroom as a kid. Just like anything I could kind of fiddle around with lights, I've just always just kind of been fascinated by it. So to be the lighting product manager at Pentair is just personally really, really cool for me.
You could be like the Chevy Chase of Christmas lights, but way better. I don't know if you had it quite under control. He wanted to be good.
Yeah.
He wanted to be good at it, but
I'm trying not to fall off the house.
Gotta do the slow-mo plug-in.
yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Thinking about pool lights, I knew we were going to talk about the history a little bit, so I did some research into it. And pools, some of the early history is not really well documented, but I did find a little blurb about the first pool light that was invented in the early 1930s. And apparently the guy who invented that, his last name was Nightingale. But there's not a lot of information out there around that. So they've been around since at least the 1930s. Pool lights really started to kind of hit the commercial mainstream in the 60s when technology was invented to allow the water to help cool the light bulb inside. Before that, they hadn't perfected it and bulbs would overheat. And so that's really where the core of the technology that's even in the incandescent lights that we make today, like the Pentair Amerlite, still using that kind of spotlight bulb in a waterproof housing. That goes all the way back, the core technology there goes all the way back to the 1960s. Then there was some, halogen lights that came in after that. And then kind of getting up into the 80s was when fiber optics took off, where you have a light tower outside the pool. It's usually in the landscaping kind of off next to the pool with a spotlight bulb shining into the fiber optic cables that run underground. And then the light is emitted in the pool. And in the 80s and into the 90s, that was kind of the status quo. But then LEDs hit. We released our first generation IntelliBrite light in 2006. And that's when some competitors did too, right around that kind of early 2000s. Next gen LEDs came around 2009. That's the IntelliBrite 5G that we have today. And then in the early teens was when nicheless lights, kind of the smaller format that fit in 1.5-inch fittings, were released. Our GloBrite kind of joined that category in 2011, 2012, and it's been very, very successful for us. And then our MicroBrite is the newest member of the lighting family at Pentair, and that was released in 2018.
Yeah, those fiber optics, man, we weren't cleaning pools or working on pools when they were actually working properly. So we got all the inheritance of a crappy working box that didn't work, and then the homeowner, wants to replace it. And I think your GloBrites do that, but we didn't do much of those replacements. But it's just a kind of a pain because you get at a pool and you got this box that you have no idea how to fix. Some of the older, we had a repair guy that had been around for, he's been in the industry for over 20 years. So he kind of knew how to work on them, and that helped. But if I was out there looking at it, there's no way I was fixing that thing.
Yeah, they dim over time. The light generator just functions worse than it did. It's hard to get parts for them anymore. And so what a lot of folks are doing is taking our MicroBrite, which fits into the 1.5-inch fitting. So a lot of those fiber optic systems, the lens in the pool where the light is emitted from, if you remove that lens and pull out the fiber optic cable, it's an 1.5-inch threaded fitting there. So a MicroBrite can fit in there. And one of the cool things about our MicroBrite is it's so short that there's enough depth there, because usually the fitting is quite shallow. Mm-hmm. So I've personally been to a pool where we removed a old fiber optic system and retrofitted it with MicroBrite. And it was a game changer because the pool's 25 years old. And for the past 10 years, the lighting has been really dim. And then when you see it that first night with LEDs in it, looks like a different pool.
Yeah,
that's super cool.
For sure. Did your GloBrites replace fiber optics too, or just a MicroBrite?
They don't, because GloBrite requires its own special niche. So we sell the GloBrite niche.
Okay. So
when you build a pool with a GloBrite niche, then it calls for a GloBrite, but
gotcha.
It's a little bit too big to fit in an 1.5-inch standard fitting.
Nice.
And that's really where MicroBrite came from, is the need to fit into those 1.5-inch fittings and have a light that's powerful and really compact. The technology evolved to the point where we could do that more recently, but back when GloBrite was conceived in 2011, 2010 timeframe, it wasn't possible.
Right. That's cool. That's a cool development for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we talked a little bit about the history just right now, and we're going to jump into another question, but want people to also understand that we're talking about pool lights, and this is a great episode for somebody that might not have any idea about what pool services or pool lights, but they're interested in getting involved. So this is a great starter episode in jumping to all these things. So, next question is, how does a pool light work exactly?
Yeah, well, kind of starting with the earliest pool lights, which were incandescent light bulbs. The technology there goes all the way back to somebody who everybody's heard of, and that's Thomas Edison. A lot of folks think, Thomas Edison invented the light bulb, and he was a singular genius. He got famous for it, but the reality is that a lot of other folks were working on it too. There's a guy named Sir Joseph Swan from England, and he actually did a lot of the early work that then Edison saw what he was doing and improved upon that to perfect the light bulb. And Edison got famous for it, but there was a lot of other people. There was some Canadian guys who were working on it too. There's actually a great book around the invention of the light bulb. It's called The Age of Edison by Ernest Freeberg, and it talks a lot about how that technology was invented. And so the core of that technology in an incandescent light bulb is a filament that creates electrical resistance. So electricity is electrons flowing, and when the electrons move through the light bulb and into the filament, there's essentially friction or resistance inside that filament wire. So the electrons encounter the friction and they generate heat, same way that like the brakes on a car get hot from the friction, and they can get so hot on a race car they actually glow. We're kind of seeing the same thing inside an incandescent light bulb, where those electrons are encountering the resistance to the point where they start glowing. So at the time, it was an incredible breakthrough because incandescent light bulbs allowed the world to move forward in terms of, travel for cars and planes to be able to move at night, for mining. Used to mine by candlelight, but then society was able to really, mine deep underground using light bulbs. For medicine, all developments in medicine depend on light, surgical lighting, and so forth. And also communication. Today we use fiber optics, which are not pool fiber optics, but digital fiber optics that allow data to be transmitted around the world using pulses of light moving through a cable. So Edison and Sir Joseph Swan's inventions way back when in the 1850s and 1880s, it was great, but it's really inefficient because most of the energy that is transmitted to the light bulb actually ends up as heat. So the heat is a byproduct of that friction. What we really want is light. The point of it's called a light bulb, but we're actually generating a lot of heat inside an incandescent light bulb, and that's why they're less efficient than LEDs. When the intention is to generate light, but you're actually generating a lot of heat, what you're doing there is wasting electricity, because you're taking the electricity and doing something with it that is unwanted. So, light bulbs were the status quo for a long, long time, but then advancements in LED allow us to make more light with less electricity.
Very good. Thank you. And so how is a pool light capable of working underwater exactly?
Well, the way that I would characterize it is that we got a lot of smart people working in our lights product line at Pentair. And what those smart people do is they kind of tackle the problem of putting a light underwater and break it apart into smaller problems that they can solve. So like, okay, how do you have a piece of electronics that can be submerged in all different temperatures 24 hours a day and not leak? Okay, well, the way that we do that is we have somebody like Ray, who's on our lights engineering team, who tackled the problem of making the electrical cord seal into the housing of the light. And so, he's analyzing the cord and thinking about the housing and the diameter of that hole and what material do we make the seal out of so that water doesn't leak in there. And so, the question is, how does the light work underwater? It's this whole series of different little problems that are solved. So the lens gasket, at some point that lens gasket is someone's project for months, where they're testing different materials and different sizes and different diameters and kind of just breaking the problem down into a series of little challenges that we eventually solve to make a product that has all the bugs worked out, and it's easy to service, easy to install, easy to use, hopefully has a long service life without leaking. And that's because we have people methodically working through the experimental testing, working with our test lab crew to put lights under pressure and put them underwater and run them at cold temperatures and hot temperatures, and then get them out in the field and do field testing with our field testing group. And just you're putting all these resources and people around the product to make sure that it can work underwater. So when it comes down to it, it's a waterproof housing with a light inside, but it's actually all these different kind of specialties that are coalescing around the product offering to make sure that it can be really successful and functional and hopefully exceed customers' expectations.
So when they're doing the field testing, how are they installing these lights? Because that's essentially what we are going to do once we get the end product. And sometimes that's not very easy. And I'm just curious if they use scuba equipment. Are they weighted down? Are they using a pool that is empty, or is it filled with water? How exactly, do you know how they're doing that exactly?
Yeah, well, different ways we would do testing. In our lab, we have test tanks, and we have a couple different pools at Pentair locations where we can install things. In those labs, we have panels that can slide up and down. So we really conveniently could just slide the wall up, mount a light, and then slide it back down, because we may have to, switch lights in and out. So we built those pools with special panels that can move up and down. So that makes it really nice in our lab environment and our test pool environment. But then in terms of field testing, we have a couple of folks who have pre-qualified field test pools to make kind of a network around the country of homeowners and some people who are in the pool industry who have said, like, yeah, I volunteer my pool to be a field test site for Pentair. And if we're developing a new light, we could ship it to those folks, and either they install it or they have a service professional install it. And yeah, they typically wouldn't empty the pool. They would either, jump in if it's not too cold or too uncomfortable, or, do the classic push-up position and lay down and just get your arms wet up to your shoulder and try to do it that way if the pool is close enough, or if the light is close enough to the surface. But yeah, there's no secret trick. You're going to end up getting wet most likely.
Right. Very good.
Yeah.
So how is a pool light typically installed? What holds it to the wall?
So the niche with classic lights, kind of the 10-inch diameter, like our IntelliBrite 5G is just a touch over 10 inches. When the pool is built, the niche is built into the cage of the pool at the rebar stage, and that's where it's bonded to the cage before gunite. And then the light mounts into there with the tab at the bottom, and then the pilot screw at the top. The screw at the top is actually part of the bonding system of the light, because then the light is bonded to the niche, and the niche is bonded to the pool, which is bonded all the way back to the equipment. So you have that electrical grounding bonding connection there. So that's kind of the large diameter lights. And then, as I said before, GloBrite and MicroBrite are the kind of next gen lights, the smaller diameter lights. GloBrite fits into its own niche, and because it's low voltage in that kind of nicheless category of lights, it doesn't have to be bonded the same way that a larger light with a metal housing would. And then MicroBrite, fitting into the 1.5-inch fitting, also doesn't have to be bonded the way that a classic pool light niche would be.
Thank you.
And one other thing I'd like to add is that, working with pool lights can be quite dangerous, and it's important for people to have, proper respect and understanding of electricity, to have proper license and permission to work with electricity. Always, before you start working with a pool light, double check, make 100% sure that the power is shut off and that you're following all safety procedures and best practices for working with electricity, because electricity, water, it's just something that can be really dangerous if you're not careful.
Yep, I agree, man. I remember, I'll never forget the story of this homeowner. One time I came to do a bid on a light, and as I walked into the backyard, he was like hopping out of the pool, all dripping wet with the light, and like hadn't turned anything off, and he just wanted me to like replace it right then and there. And I was like, I don't think you understand the concept of how any of this works, man. Like, he is literally wet, like as I came in the backyard, and hadn't turned anything off. Like, literally wanted it done right that second. And I'm like, I'm just here to like take a look at it.
Might have just saved your life.
Probably did. Man, that's crazy. Definitely need to know what you're doing when you're working on lights. That's for sure.
Ledge Lounger has done it again. Their new signature bar stool might be one of my favorite products yet.
Why is that?
I thought you'd never ask. Imagine you're hosting a get-together barbecue with friends and family, and the music is bumping, the carne asada is sizzling. Things are going great for sound and smell anyway, but all of a sudden, some of the people want to move their conversation to the pool, but there's no comfortable sitting in the pool.
Well, that's where Ledge Lounger has you covered. Their new signature bar stool comes in 2 different sizes, bar height and counter height. The way these work is simple. You can sit on the deck or wherever you want, and when you're ready to sit in the pool, you just toss it in. The self-sinking technology will drop the seat to the pool floor in just minutes. And best of all, when it comes to Ledge Lounger, you know you're getting a quality product that looks great, is backed by an awesome warranty, and of course, comes in a variety of colors.
And one of the most beneficial parts is that any type of pool and any type of business can sell. You can be a builder or a service company. It's that easy.
Absolutely. So you can learn more by going to ledgeloungers.com or clicking the link we provided below. So let's shift kind of to what the options, that Pentair has. You touched base on them a little bit earlier, but maybe you can walk us through kind of, the different ones and, what their best practices are. So let's start with the Amerlite.
So Amerlite is sort of our classic light. It's been around for a long time. If you've seen a pool with kind of the single light in the deep end, chances are it's an Amerlite. It's the silver ring and the circular glass lens, kind of the size of a dinner plate. That's the full-size niche light. Incandescent technology in there, so it's essentially a spotlight bulb in a waterproof housing. The special lens to diffuse that light and spread it around the pool. So it's well known and well loved in the industry. Been around for a long time, but it's also prime target for upgrades and upselling from the old incandescent technology where you have to replace the bulb periodically to LEDs, and that's where IntelliBrite comes in.
Right. The Amerlite is kind of the most common thing that we see out there, or used to be, and that's why I kind of wanted to touch base on it a little bit, because it's definitely, if you're new to lights and you do see, like you said, just one light in deep end pool, like it's probably that. So just make people aware of it. And, talking about the IntelliBrite, kind of transition into that and talk about that and kind of how LEDs work.
Sure. Yeah. So IntelliBrite fits into that large size niche. It's offered in color version, which is typically more of a residential LED light, and then also white. The white version is offered in a couple different wattages, depending on what a commercial pool would need. In the color version, we have 5 solid colors that are user selectable either through our automation systems or light controllers, or you can just select the different colors just using a light switch. So there's the series of on-off clicks to select the particular solid color or one of the 7 color shows that's programmed into the color version of IntelliBrite. So there's the Caribbean mode and the sunset mode, and what those are is inside the light itself, we have an array of different colored LEDs that are programmed to kind of blend from one color to another. So we even have the mode that's called patriotic mode. And when you activate that mode, it goes through a sequence of fading from red to white to blue. So if you're having your barbecue on the 4th of July, you can have the red, white, and blue color show going in your pool with IntelliBrite 5G.
Yeah.
And so while we're talking about IntelliBrite and its siblings in the product line, the GloBrite, the MicroBrite, or LED products, earlier in the conversation, I was talking about how incandescent light bulbs work and how they're less efficient than LEDs. Just take a second to talk about how LED technology works, because I think it's really amazing. And I'll say at the beginning of this, if there's any semiconductor scientists listening, I'm not a complete expert in LEDs, but I did a little research to learn how they work, and I think it's absolutely amazing. So LED is a light emitting diode, and diodes in electronics engineering it's like an electrical version of a check valve. So check valves just let water flow in one direction and not flow back in the other direction. And that's what a diode does with electricity. It just lets electricity flow in one direction and not flow back. And what happens inside that diode, the diode itself is a semiconductor where the scientists who make that, they make 2 different types of material inside that semiconductor. And then the layer between the 2 allows the electrical current to pass in one direction. And the electrons or the electricity can pass through one material, and then they call them electron holes. And the electron hole is a place where an electron could be, but it's not. And so as the electrons move through the semiconductor, they fill that hole, it excites the electron, and through the process of electroluminescence, it creates a photon. And a photon is essentially light. photons, they're amazing aspect of physics because they can carry light as a force, but they don't have any mass. So you can't really weigh a photon. And a photon is electromagnetic energy. And it not only is it light, microwaves are made of photons, X-rays are made of photons. And this idea of hey, what is a photon? It all goes back to Albert Einstein. So in this area of the conversation, we're talking, physics and semiconductor science. It's really complex, but if you boil it down, what we're really doing is just exciting an electron so that it produces photons and it produces light. And you're able to do that in a much more efficient way than you do with incandescent light bulbs, which are, an earlier form of technology, much, much less efficient.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for that. That's awesome explanation. Yeah. So let's switch over to the smaller lights now and talk about the GloBrite.
Yeah. So the GloBrite has been around since around 2011. And one of the great things about it is that it can be installed in shallower areas of the pool. We offer a couple different niches for the GloBrite for fiberglass pools, vinyl liner pools, and for gunite pools, and also some color options to allow the faceplate ring of GloBrite to match the pool finish, look nicer when you're matching that pool finish. GloBrite, it's a 12-volt light offered in white LED or color LED. And then the color LED versions of GloBrite also follow the same color shows as IntelliBrite, with the 5 color options and 7 color shows, all compatible with Pentair automation systems and controllers. So GloBrite's a terrific product. It's been really, really successful. Starting over 10 years ago, it started to really become something that was used a lot in new pool construction. And now there's a huge number of GloBrites that are installed out there in the world. The other thing I'd like to add about GloBrite is it is the light that is installed into our bubblers. And so if you come across a Pentair bubbler that's installed in a sun shelf or a tanning shelf facing up with the return water, bubbling up out of it, chances are there's a GloBrite inside that producing the light at night.
Yeah, I was gonna say I seem to see those kind of in negative edge basins and some of those like sun shelves with lower, or smaller, shallow bodies of water.
Mm-hmm.
You'll kind of see a lot of those. It's cool you match it with the...
Yeah, looks like a little volcano of water with light underneath it. It's a really nice effect, I think.
You probably use more of those lights at the trade shows, right? Because it's such a, shallow body of water.
Yeah, we have a trade show display that's usually front and center in our trade show booth that has some different lights in it. In there, we'll also have our Magic Stream laminators, which have a light down inside. And those are it mounts on the deck a lot like a deck jet would, but it projects the really smooth, glassy stream of water, which is laminar flow, non-turbulent flow. And the amazing thing about our laminators is that the light down inside the laminar housing in the pool deck is actually shining up toward the sky. But when the stream of water is projecting out of there, it goes up and then it bends over and arcs and goes down into the pool. That arc of water can actually kind of work like a fiber optic cable, and the light stays inside the stream of water. So even though the light is shining up towards the sky, you can get a dot of light on the floor of the pool. And it's because the light is moving all the way through that arcing stream of water. Imagine the water was like a glass rod and you were shining a flashlight into one end, it'll stay inside and shoot out at the end of the rod. So we use a LED light inside the laminators to light up that. It's like a beam of water in a way.
Yeah, that's really cool technology. Definitely looks way better than deck jets. That's for sure.
yeah, really cool.
Cool. Well, what about the MicroBrite?
Yeah, MicroBrite, kind of next generation pool lighting coming after the GloBrite. GloBrite is still great, but the place where MicroBrite has an advantage over GloBrite is that it's so much smaller and more compact, and it also fits into a standard 1.5-inch return fitting. Great thing about MicroBrite is that since it's so compact, it gives pool builders and designers the ability to put lights in places where maybe they couldn't have before, because you don't need much depth in the wall. Tight areas by stairs or in a narrow wall can accommodate a MicroBrite because you just have to accommodate for that fitting and then a little bit of space for the conduit behind it. When we released MicroBrite, I got some early customer feedback from someone who was building a negative edge pool. And then they had a set of stairs that went kind of around the outside of the pool, right by the wall, and then down to an outdoor kitchen that was on the far side of the pool. And the homeowner wanted lights in that wall, but the wall was so narrow that they wouldn't have been able to do it with something like a GloBrite, or certainly not with a large niche conventional light. And so MicroBrite opened up some flexibility for that pool builder to put lights where he wouldn't have otherwise been able to in that narrow wall, because the MicroBrite itself is only just over 3 inches long. So that wall was so narrow, but he was still able to squeeze some lights into the wall just because it doesn't require much depth.
So we talked to Dave and Matt about how their Riptide pool vacuum is transforming the swimming pool industry in episode 86. Have you listened to it yet? If not, what are you waiting for? The Riptide vacuum has many innovative features such as a locking bag ring, a quick disconnect power cable, a 10-year warranty on the vacuum case, and much more. We all know that efficiency is key in our industry, and the Riptide will greatly increase your productivity. The Riptide can filter all the way down to 60 micron for fine debris and is a beast when it comes to heavy debris and leaves. So start working easier and get through your route faster today. To order your Riptide vacuum, head on over to riptidevac.com, where they even offer 0% financing to qualified buyers. And as a special bonus to our listeners, you can use coupon code POOLCHASERS during checkout to get free shipping and 2 free vacuum bags. So what kind of options do you have for landscaping lights or water features?
Yeah, in the landscape lighting category, we have the IntelliBrite landscape light, which has a stake on the bottom, and you can stake it in the planting areas and in the landscaping around a pool. It has a head that can be angled up and down, side to side, so that you can use it as a path light to kind of shine out onto a sidewalk or deck area, or angle it up and do uplighting on trees or hardscape features. And what sets it apart from other landscape lights is that it syncs to the color shows that are in our IntelliBrite lights and MicroBrite lights and GloBrite lights. So you can have, if they're on the same zone and all hooked to the same transformer, when you activate the lights, they would all be on the same color show. So whatever, if you want solid blue light or the Caribbean mode or whatever solid color or color show you want, can be synced between the landscape lighting and the pool lighting. Another way to do it would be to put them on separate circuits with separate transformers, and then you could have kind of a more dynamic look where one color is in the pool and then different colors are in the landscaping. So maybe blue in the pool and then green in the landscaping or whatever you want. But that's the nice thing about the Pentair landscape lighting, is that it syncs to our pool lights.
It hooks up to the automation panels too, right?
So, yeah. All of our automation systems are pre-configured to control our landscape lighting and our pool lighting. So whether you're using your app or your indoor control panel, it's as easy as pressing a button to switch from one kind of light to the other, or one light show to the other.
I'm not sure that a lot of people know that the pool panel can control landscape lighting. It took me a while to learn that. So you can actually use pool panel to control that, which is pretty awesome that you guys put that in there.
Yeah.
So we know that not all lights out there are going to be working correctly. What do you suggest for service professionals when diagnosing a light that might not be working? What's the process look like?
Yeah, well, the first thing that I think we would always want to remind people is to check the breaker, check the electrical panel before you start interacting with the light or working with the light. Make sure the power is cut off. And when you're troubleshooting anything electrically, the key is to just work through it methodically and work through the circuit and find anything that you think it could be. So, just because the light is not working, I wouldn't necessarily jump right into, well, let's yank it out and pull the cord and install a new one. Let's maybe go back and first check the breaker, then check the terminals inside the transformer, inside the panel, make sure that the screw is not loose or the wire, came undone or there's a short in there. And just be patient and work through, make sure you actually have power coming to the panel. Maybe this sub panel doesn't have power to it because a breaker is stripped somewhere else, on the property. So I think electrical troubleshooting just requires patience and a methodical approach before you assume that, the circuit board is dead. I better get a new one, or let's jump in there and replace the light bulb. Check some other stuff first before you pull the light.
Yeah, I think that's a great recommendation, because a lot of times I think we would find that the GFCI is bad, and that's a much more simple fix than the whole light. They make GFCIs that some run out of life, which is weird, and I've seen them installed. So you just got to check different things, that the breaker's not tripped, that the GFCI is not tripped. Sometimes the light switch itself, can go bad, so you need to check those. And you can also have these old X10 systems out there, that were old automation, that the way they were hooked up, if they are bad, then the light's not going to work. That doesn't necessarily mean the light's messed up or the GFCI is messed up. It's the connection, on the X10 switches. So, there's just different steps you go through when you're diagnosing a pool and making sure for the customer that you are doing your due diligence and not just automatically assuming that they need $1,000 upgrade or the board's bad or something. Definitely recommend learning from somebody who knows what they're doing, walks you through that. And a trained electrician is the most recommended for sure.
Yeah. Somebody told me once, the fixed is always the last thing you check. Because you stop checking.
Yeah.
Yes. And one other thing I'd like to mention, we're talking about troubleshooting lights, and if it turns out to be the bulb, or it turns out to be the light engine in IntelliBrite, and you do need to pull that light out and work on it, open it up, replace the bulb, close it back up, we always recommend that you replace the gasket that goes around the lens, because those gaskets are under a lot of compression. So with our lights, you have the tension clamp that goes around the back with a screw that kind of holds the face ring and the lens and the gasket tightly against the light housing. And that gasket over time can take a compression set where it's being squeezed down and a little bit deformed. So if you reuse that old gasket, it may not seal as well as a new gasket would. So we sell the replacement gasket kit, and you really don't want to go back out to that pool for a second time because it leaked, and you don't want to be the one that caused the leak. Like, hey, you were out here last week and now my light doesn't work again. You go out and you realize the light is leaking and flooded. So it's really best practice to replace the gasket. And if you read our instruction manuals, you'll see in there that it explains the gasket replacement procedure. It's just really good idea to, while you're in there, replace the gasket and then follow the procedure for tightening up the clamp and the screw and the ring and get it all situated.
Yeah.
Tighten back down nicely.
One last thing before we move on from that, I think one thing I learned, which was really good, is, and it's not always accurate, but majority of the time, if you reset the GFCI and it turns on and it doesn't trip, that's an indication that it's the bulb, more than the fixture itself. If it keeps tripping, usually the fixture is bad because it's water, it's got water to it or something, so it's tripping every time. That way, if you reset the GFCI and turn the light switch on and there is power, completing the circuit, then typically, the light bulb is the first thing that I would do before, replacing the whole fixture, unless it's just, 1970s old or something. But just a good little tool there.
And what do you recommend if somebody needs to replace the fixture? You just talked about, maybe doing the bulb and gasket, but what does it look like if you need to replace the entire fixture?
Yeah, well, you're going to be pulling cord. If it's a whole light replacement, that's where you want to remove the old light, cut the cord, and get ready to pull some cable through the conduit there.
Triceps.
What's that?
Says triceps day.
Yeah, exactly.
You won't need to go to the gym depending on the pull.
Yeah. So, I've done it a few times myself, and there's always that moment of, attaching the new cord to the old cord and making sure that they're connected really well and hoping you don't get halfway through and they come disconnected. But I've seen some pretty amazing tricks for somebody who, pulled a cord through and didn't attach the new cord to the old cord to pull it through. I was out on a job one time where we needed to fish cord through, but we didn't have a fish tape and the cord was already pulled out. So we said, what are we going to do? So a clever guy out there on the job took a little piece of sponge, a little like kitchen sponge. He cut off a corner of it and made it like a little piece of like 1 inch by 1 inch square of sponge. And then he tied that sponge to some string, like kite string, and then pushed the sponge into the conduit and then shot water through. So he blasted the sponge through the conduit with a jet of water, and then it was like letting the string out of his hand, and then lo and behold, out into the pool, the sponge and the string came floating out, and now we had a string pull through the conduit, and then attach a cord to that and pull the string back through. So do whatever it takes to get that cord pulled through, but there's more than one way to skin a cat.
Yeah, man, that is the roughest thing. I am the worst person. Anybody listening to the podcast has probably heard me make fun of myself before, but I'm definitely not the one you want on a light job. I always seem to get the worst. The worst.
Yeah. Ty is the last person you want to be around your light. It's not going to work.
Kyle and I just replaced my parents last weekend, and I told them, like, if it's probably not going to come out because I'm doing it.
Right.
But luckily, and it did struggle for a while. Luckily, I got it to break loose, and we had to use a fish tape to get it through. But yeah, if the cord, if you can't tie the new cord, like you said, a fish tape is basically, goes through. You can tie a new cord to the fish tape, pull it through. Or there's a lot of tricks like that with string that I've heard people use. They make special lubricant that you can buy that, supposedly helps you slide it through. You can use basically lube tube too if you can't. But there's a lot of different tricks, a lot of different angles. We had this guy that used to do them for us. That was amazing. He could do the whole thing by himself, and I don't know how still to this day, but he would roll the light cord out, throw it in the water, lay it all out, and then go pull it himself and do it in less time than I would do with another person. So it's pretty incredible.
Well, one thing I remember is when we first wanted to get into changing lights many years ago, we had Mark Hernandez, which we have a lot to thank for, from SCP, came and visited us on a job. And I just remember having the light up on the deck, and he's like, listen to what I'm about to say, And when he was doing the electrical tape, connecting the new line, he's like, look at what I'm doing and take the time to do this correctly every time. It's going to take a little bit more time than other people might because they're rushing. But if this line breaks in the pull, then you just wasted a lot of time. It's like, so make sure that every step of the process you're thinking through and you're taking your time to do it correctly. That way you're getting the job done. You're not coming back. You're not wasting a bunch of time being here. And I know I'm not explaining how to do that exactly, but whoever is going to be out there in the field to teach you how to do something, make sure that, you're paying attention to what they're telling you and you're taking the time to follow that process and do it correctly every single time, because it really will save you, time and heartache in the long run.
Yeah, and Pentair has field technicians too that I'm sure, right, Zach, can go out there and help teach you how to do it.
Sure. Yeah. Our sales and service team are, most of them came up through the industry and have years of experience doing this stuff. So, if you need tips and tricks, definitely reach out to your Pentair rep because they got your back every time.
Yeah. It can be intimidating to learn. So I remember that day too. That's cool. I forgot about that, but.
Well, thank you. So what type of warranty is offered on the lights, and, what information is needed, from the fixture when you're buying the entire fixture?
Yeah, the bulbs are warranted for 60 days on incandescent bulbs. Typically, the light itself is warranted for a year, unless it's part of a full equipment set, and then it's covered by the blanket warranty that everything has on the equipment pad and in the pool, as far as Pentair products. And then our IntelliBrite 5G White is more of a commercial product, and that one has a 2-year warranty. And then MicroBrite has a 2-year warranty as well. And then in terms of information, it's really the install date and the serial number, you get in touch with your Pentair warranty coordinator and get you set up with a warranty claim.
That's very, very important, because if you throw the box away, which has the serial number on it, the only way to get the serial number is to pull the light off of the niche to see it underneath the thing. Ooh. And I've had to do that several times to get it warranted. So the best practice, which we did the other day, Kyle, is take a picture of the box, take a picture of the light, serial number, so you have both of those, if something happens and you need one, because it's a real pain in the butt in the wintertime to go in and pull a light out and try to find the serial number.
That pool's getting drained next time.
So where can people get trained on lights, and what do you guys have to offer for that?
Well, our training team, of course, runs Pentair University training seminars, travel around the country and have events. Typically, we'll kind of take over the conference area of a whole hotel for a couple of days, and in the meeting rooms have different seminars and classes where our training team, they're like professors of pool training. So they'll stand up in front of the room and offer training in all different subjects, whether it's hydraulics, intro electrics, automation systems, heating. So our training team, a lot of these folks spend many, many weeks, a year on the road, traveling around, training customers, spending time in the field. I think there's no better team in the world to get training from. So if you're looking for training, please connect with Pentair on that. Visit our website, look for training opportunities, and get signed up. I've been to some of those classes myself, and it's a really invaluable resource that we offer to get people trained up in the industry.
Yeah, you guys have some awesome classes. I know we talked to Sue yesterday about the Master Service Program, and they're rolling out some stuff in there you can learn about lights. But I think lights is something you really have to, get some field training in. So like we said earlier, reach out to the Pentair rep, see if you can have somebody come out and actually walk you through how to do that, or find a licensed electrician that knows how to do that can walk you through the safety procedures and the exact steps on how to do it, because it's not something that you should mess around with if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Well, we'll put all the links and everything, in the notes, and obviously Pentair.com is a place to go for a lot of the information, but we will, we have an episode webpage for every episode that we will put everything in there so you guys can find more information. But we really appreciate you joining us today, Zach. Thanks for all the great information.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. Really appreciate what you guys are doing for the industry, and appreciate the podcast.
Hey, Pool Chasers. Thanks for checking out this episode. Did you know that each episode has its own page on our website? This is where you can find more information about the guest and episode topic, as well as all the resources that we discuss throughout the show. To get to the webpage, click the link below. Also below, you will find links to the sponsors of the show, as well as links to follow us on our social media channels. On our channels, you will find some of our favorite clips and bonus material. Please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Our tag is Pool Chasers. We also have a Facebook group for the Pool Chasers community. Here you will find like-minded professionals all looking to make each other better. One last thing. If the episode has brought you value, please check out our Patreon page to support us. And if you could please rate and review the podcast, we would love to hear what your favorite topics are. Thank you for your time and your ear.
See you out there, Pool Chasers.